Okay, so the next speaker has come all the way from Florida to be with us today. It's quite an honor. And also just a little bit ago, his family came in to surprise him. He didn't know they were coming, so that's pretty exciting for him. So Jovan, I met Jovan here in Nebraska. He was the special teams coach at Nebraska. How many years ago? When did you come to Nebraska, Jovan?
2018, my first year.
Okay. So he has 26 years of experience as a college football coach, including Nebraska, FAU, West Point, UCF, North Carolina, and he is currently at Florida International University. He is the husband to Lisa. Lisa, wave hello. And father of 3, Maya, wave hello. Kira, wave hello. And their son, Junior, Jovan Jr., correct, is not here with us today. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Physics and Mathematics from Northern Michigan University, where he was also inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame. He's kind of a big deal. He was a finalist for the Orange Bowl Award for Courage. He was diagnosed with throat cancer in January of 2019. Since that time, he's become passionate about spreading awareness of the disease and near and dear to my heart, the importance of the rehabilitation journey and survivorship. Please welcome Jovan Dewitt.
Oh, the arrow keys, got it. Okay, everybody's a little bit. Cool, back again. So, I definitely wanted to include my email and phone number. I have no idea if I can be of any help to anybody, but I always want to make sure that I'm available to anybody or anyone and everyone that has unfortunately come across what a lot of us in here have dealt with in some form or fashion or another. And I wanted to express my deepest of gratitudes for Tracy and everybody for organizing this and asking me to be involved in it. It is something that's become very near and dear to my heart. Obviously, in 2019, I was diagnosed with throat cancer, and had to. And this is a little bit of the story. I'll start with a little bit of the background of me and the story of it, and then how I'm trying to rehab through it. And still, it's an ongoing process as we all go through it. And I'll touch on this a little bit later. One of the things that my wife and I talk about quite a bit is I get prepared for, as a football coach, you always want to be prepared and have a game plan. You know what you're going to do, and you know how it's going to work, and you know how things are going to go. And you try to get yourself as much information as possible on every different possible scenario and outcome. Like for me, when I was first diagnosed, in my youth and in my growing up, I'm a little bit longer in tooth than some of the others, which means I'm old. I have never known anybody to survive a cancer diagnosis in my personal family. Whether it was a family member, my grandmother or my grandfather, or my best friend's sister, who I considered a sister, I've never known anybody to survive it. Not that I'd come in personal contact with. So for me, thank you so much. For me, it was a really horrifying ordeal to have to get told that I got that disease. And literally one of the first things I did was I bought another house. As crazy as that sounds, one of my brothers is a mortgage broker, and upon the initial diagnosis, I told my wife we're going to buy another house in Florida, because I knew that if I honestly resigned myself to the fact that I might not make it, and so I wanted to make sure that my family was going to be taken care of and had a place to stay. So literally one of the first things I did was bought another house, which seems kind of back-assed, as my brother informed me of. But it's what we did, and it was a fun place. So a little bit of the background of me. Can you guys hear me if I'm not using the microphone? I actually have a voice now. So I married my high school sweetheart, Lisa, in the back. We've known each other since we were 13 or 14. So it's been like 30 plus years that I get lucky enough to call her mine, to be quite honest with you. I just finished my first season at a dream job in Nebraska. When you talk about being a college football coach, one of the places you want to work at, one of the places you want to be associated with is the University of Nebraska. I have 3 kids, 3 awesome kids. 2 of them are here, Maya, Kira, and my son Junior was playing in a playoff game last night, so he wasn't able to make it. But you know, everything was going awesome. It was sweet. I mean, I was living the dream, and then I got smacked in the face with a bad deal. And so you don't know, right? What you don't know. You're how can I phrase this? You don't know what you don't know, I guess is probably the best way to say it. And honestly, I approached it like it was a game. You go in, you have a game plan, you work it, and then you're done, and you move on to the next deal. What I did not realize was the lingering long-term aftercare effects that you have to deal with, that a lot of us deal with over and over again. And I'm honestly thankful to Tracy for exposing me to that, and I'm going to talk about her in a minute. But that's me actually in the bottom left as I first got here. That's me in the upper right. Literally, the bald-headed guy in the background is my father-in-law. He had burnt, and so some of you guys that have gone through it, you know how smells can trigger things, right? Like not really fun ones. So I still tease him about this to this day, but I was in the basement not feeling very good, and he had burnt toast, and literally sent me to the ER for like the next 3 days, because I just couldn't stop. And then that's actually me in one of the first games back, being able to coach again, which obviously was a pretty cool moment for me. There's challenges that we all go through, whether it's with the cancer especially. I'm a workaholic. Like, I work, I don't know, 18, 19, 20 hours a day during the season. Right? It's just part of being a football coach, and I don't really consider it work. It's one of the purposes I have. Like, I enjoy coaching football. I enjoy educating young men through the game of football and using it as a tool to help guys out. Because a lot of the guys that I coach, a lot of the guys that I work with, don't have a nuclear family. They don't come from a good place. Especially now that I'm back down in South Florida, Miami, they come from some horrific backgrounds. And the question was asked before about one of your peaks. One of the peaks I have now is I'm able to relate better to some of the kids who come from what feel like completely hopeless environments. And I think we've all been at that point in the part of the treatment or the rehab where you just, for whatever the minute or whatever the day, hopefully it's a fleeting moment, but you feel hopeless. And you don't feel like there's much going on for you. And so I'm able to relate with a lot of those kids on a different level, obviously, but that's really kind of been a peak for mine of being able to be much more relatable to my kids. There's challenges to doing the rehab. There's the physical challenges. I lost a little bit over 100 pounds in my journey, between the chemo and the radiation and the feeding tube and all of those things. My entire life is, since I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I'm 48 now. So for the last 40 years, my entire life has revolved around school and football and working out. And so for the first time in my life, I was not able to do any of it. I couldn't do anything. So my whole self-sense was completely out of skew. I had no idea what I was gonna do, who I was doing anything for. So that was the physical challenge for me, as well as an emotional challenge for me. I don't know about anybody else, but I was exhausted. I was just flat out a dish rag. I was exhausted. I had no chutzpah left in me. I was tired, emotionally tired, physically tired, mentally tired. I was done. It was over for me. So that's part of the challenges of rehab that I thought. I got really tired of hearing the new normal. I don't know if you guys get tired of hearing that statement. Like, it drives me bananas. I want my old normal. I want as much of my old shit as I've been able to do my entire life. Right? I want to be able to get up in the morning and go work out. Like, I want that. And I realize now that that's probably not going to go back to ever being that way. I'm pretty close. I'm working on it. There's some social challenges to the fact of rehab, right? Because throughout the journey and the treatment, you're isolated so much. You're not used to being around people. I literally kept myself up in my bedroom or my basement for forever at a time. So just the fact of being around a bunch of people with a bunch of noise, or a bunch of kids, and in my job, you're surrounded by 150 football players who all smell and act disgusting half the time anyway. It became an issue for me. So just getting myself acclimated to being able to talk to people again. And then there's the emotional challenges. The fact that when I was first diagnosed, there's a few thoughts that really started to drive me. I wanted to make sure that I taught my son how to shave, because he was young. I wanted to be around Maya for whenever she gets married. Kira was really young, and I wanted to be there that I didn't know if she'd remember me. And so those were my emotional whys as to how. And so I knew that one of the things I'd read about, I'm an avid reader. I try to read, 1 to 2 books a week on any varying topic. So if you guys have any, I would really appreciate any suggestions. I read a book that the title of it is Endure. Because again, like my background was I didn't know anybody that had ever survived the diagnosis. Like that's just been my personal experience. I didn't know anybody that did. And I read a book out there called Endure, which talks about the difference between your physical capabilities and what you're actually ending up being able to do. See, a lot of scientists and doctors believe that the body is like a machine, right? And that's their job, right? If you're a doctor, that's your job. The body's a machine. You've got a VO2 max, you've got lactate thresholds, you've got all these different things that all go into how fast and how far you can run. There's always certain people that exceed those marks over and over and over again. And I wanted to find out what was the connection there and why some people do it and why some people don't. And there's still no definitive answer for it, but I can promise you that my family and the doctors and the people that help take care of me are 100% the reason why, right? And I implore everybody as they're going through those moments of despair or hopelessness or you've lost your sense of purpose to refocus again and find out what's your why. Right? Because those are the things that kept pushing me through the really awful days. This is actually a picture of me right before I started. I was actually somewhat of an athlete at one point in time. And that's a picture of me right after I finished, before I had the feeding tube taken out. So you can see again, prototypical football player kind of guy. Right? Now I'm not so much. So I couldn't do a lot of the things. The physical challenges of rehab they were a lot. They were a lot for me, right? And I would go see Tracy, and she would torture me for an hour at a time. I personally thought she did it intentionally, but I've never met anybody who was more invested in the people that they care about, and the people that they work with. Now, however, the first couple of times I went, I literally left the bed in a pool of sweat because it was so painful, and I'm pretty sure she enjoyed every moment. At least that's what I tell myself. Anyway. And then as you go through the chemo and the radiation part, I don't know if you guys experienced this as well, but my internal clock was all the way checked up. I mean, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd get up and go try to hop on an elliptical for a while and I just couldn't sleep anymore. Which later I found out was panic attacks, which I had never had in my life. I make decisions every day in front of millions of people that get me fired or get me another job or get me to keep my job. When you coach at a Big Ten school or an ACC school, every decision you make is scrutinized to the nth degree by, honestly, most people who have no idea what they're talking about. Just turn on SportsCenter, you'll find out. So I've never felt different levels of anxiety or panic or things like that. And as it came to find out, the doctor's like, yeah, we call those panic attacks. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't believe in those things. Well, they're real. Unfortunately, I had to learn about that the hard way. So, I couldn't swallow, I couldn't talk. I mean, I really couldn't even walk to go to the bathroom, to be quite honest with you. I'd gotten so weak. The best advice I'd gotten from someone was a coach that I had known. He'd reached out to me after my initial diagnosis. He said, work out for as long as you can, for as hard as you can, until you can't anymore. And if I had not done that a little bit, even if it's just a little bit, I am pretty sure that I would have a completely different outcome. I was unaware of the long-lasting issues that talked about that. And again, I don't think it's any issue I don't think it's not like it's the doctors that don't want to talk to you about it, but I can remember probably within the first couple months of Tracy putting me through a torture session. That's what we call them. It's awful. She loves it. She's sadistic, right? Yeah, absolutely. I love it. But I remember talking to her, I'm like, hey, I've noticed that my feet start to burn at night when I go to bed. What is that about? Is that normal? She's like, oh yeah, they call that neuropathy. I'm like, what are you talking about, neuropathy? I'm like, what is that about? And they're like, it's just not talked about. And I understand the reason why. A lot of times you can talk about, hey, this may happen and that may happen, and some person will actually in their mind just make it happen. So I get the psychology of why doctors don't talk about it. But if it's me, and you're dealing with someone like me, I wanna know everything that can possibly happen so I can deal with it as it shows up. So I would implore the powers to be to make sure that more things about aftercare are talked about. Because I like, just from, and I think everybody in here has experienced this, from where you work to where you worship, to the doctors, to everything. Once you're done, once they say you're dead, it's over. Right? You're all of a sudden just supposed to return back to the world and be exactly like it was, right? And you're back at, like, for my job, like, they don't really care what you're going through. You gotta go produce on Saturday, right? It's just not the deal. And so what I didn't realize, and honestly, I thought naively enough the same thing, quite honestly. So for me, I would implore the powers to be to really talk to someone about what they're gonna do rehab. Because I really think, for me, it's more of a light at the end of the tunnel, right? To me, it's not just about getting that last scan that says you're good to go. Because there's so much, I'm 4 years removed now, I got one more scan in June, right? There's so much more that goes into it afterwards that I had absolutely no idea how to navigate. And honestly, if it wasn't for Tracy and some of the doctors, I would be completely lost, and my wife, obviously. I would be completely lost. Like now my new journey is the dental aspect of it because of all the radiation, which is a complete nightmare. But I think, any place that could just have an advocacy center for somebody to talk about, hey, this is what it's gonna look like afterwards. Hey, this is how your dentist needs to word it to an insurance company so that dental coverage gets taken care of. Like, those are all things I had no idea about. And to me, that's part of the rehab process, because so many times before you start rehab, you feel like everything's out of your control and you don't have the ability to do anything. To me, I get a sense of control when I have a sense of knowledge of what's going on around me, what's happening to me, and what I can do. So how do I talk to my dentist about, hey, this needs to be worded like this so that the insurance will take care of it because my teeth are splitting into? Or who do I talk to at a pain center, or anything? But it gives you a sense of control back over your life, which I think is one of the things that I missed the most about through my cancer journey, was I had no sense of control anymore. Like, my whole life has been about, we wake up at this time, we go to work out, we go to practice, we go to meetings, we go to film, we go to study hall, we do all of this. Like, I knew where I was going and what I was doing. And the hardest part for me, losing my sense of self, was I know I was at the mercy of everybody else. I was, whenever the doctors told me to go, whenever Tracy said, hey, I gotta go put my elbow in your neck, all of those things.
I did not do that.
Oh.
Elbow?
Oh yeah.
My feet might have went on the wall, but my elbow did not go in your neck. He's a big guy.
I think I touched on this briefly. There's social aspects to it, and everybody's got these things, but my job entails that I do a lot of public speaking, whether it's at booster functions, talking to recruits, coaching in general. Like, 95% of my job is just being able to communicate effectively. And so when you have those issues, like I couldn't talk anymore, I actually have, let's see if I have, let me grab this really quick so we can see where I'm going with it. So when I was first out of the treatment center and dealing with it, this was a quick interview. Hopefully you guys can hear this. Yeah, you should do it. All right, so this is what my voice sounded like initially when I got done.
But I'm doing much better. I'm a lot skinnier than I once was. I've lost about 95 pounds or so. So I don't look the same. But I still think quick and move fast, so that's good at least.
Still believe in myself. But still believing in myself. So I had effectively lost my ability to communicate, which I don't know how you coach if you can't communicate. So my whole career was like literally on the precipice of being done. Like, I've been coaching for 20 some odd years. I might actually have to go use my physics degree instead of coaching football, which was horrifying to me. But so from that standpoint, like, there's being social, being out and being about, I couldn't talk. It's not that I didn't want to do those things anymore, I just physically couldn't do them anymore. So, and I talk about these things because I want to talk about the value of the rehab that we have, and I still get emails and texts and calls from different doctors, making sure that I'm staying on top of it to this day, because I don't know that it'll ever go away. And I don't know that I'll ever not have to do some form of rehab for the rest of my life, which is fine. Others look at it as a workout, right? And then obviously there's the emotional aspects that I don't think get talked about enough, especially if you're a male, right? Guys are taught, and I was taught most assuredly, to not show emotion, to not express how you feel, to bury everything. And I've done that my entire life. I don't do it as much anymore. But you feel a certain way about a subject, and you just don't talk about it, right? And I looked it up even before I got here, but and I think Tracy brought it to my attention. She was like, hey, make sure you're taking care of the emotional aspect of which again, nobody else had ever mentioned to me. Nobody else had ever talked to me about it. Because the suicide rate for men with head and neck cancer is ridiculously high. To which I did not understand that at first when she first mentioned it to me. I did not understand that. I love me some me, right? I love my life, I love my family, I love my job, I love everything, I do, I love it, right? So I could not, when it was first brought to my attention that it was really high, I was like, what are you talking about? And then as I went further down the rabbit hole of rehab and recovery, I started to understand why it happens. Like I said, you lose your sense of self, you lose your sense of purpose. Every day is about what's my next doctor's appointment, what's my next rehab appointment, I just want to go coach, and I can't. So I got it after a while, I started to understand it. And I don't think enough attention is paid to that. The physical aspects of it, I think a ton of people pay attention to, obviously. But I think there's an emotional, psychological aspect that's really just not given enough attention to. I still to this day probably don't do enough with it. Again, I talked about, I was lucky enough to have a team of people that were there for me that I felt a sense of responsibility to. Right? I felt a sense of responsibility to make myself better, to use this experience as something that I can help other people with. I feel that sense of responsibility because so many people help me. These are a few people. Shelly, there was another guy, Brian and Tracy, that really helped give me my career back. Big time. I would not be coaching. I would not have my job if you didn't help me. I wouldn't. That is extremely important that you know that. Shelly, is Shelly here yet? No, she might have left already. Shelly tried like crazy to get me to do yoga. I don't bend like that. I mean, it was like a 20-minute process to try to get me in child's pose. Doesn't work. Way too much scar tissue in the hips and knees. She did introduce me to meditation, which at first, I'm just going to tell you right now, I was not all about that life. I was like, come on, this is some hippie thing that I'm not into. It's just how I grew up, right? However, I completely underestimated the value of it. Teaching your body to relax, teaching your body to accept what's going on here and now. Just the ability to relax and how much it helped me heal was unbelievable. I had no idea it was that good. I've actually incorporated it in a lot of the coaching that I do now. A lot of my players are involved in it now. And there's been tangible proof of those guys playing better because of it. So for that much, I'm extremely thankful for it. Some of the benefits I've got, I can finally say the number that's after 7. I still struggle with that number and the first letter of my last name because of the scar tissue in my neck, but I'm getting better at saying 7, 8, and D. Those are 8 and D are 2 letters or 2 things that I still struggle with to be able to say, but I can actually do it now. That's actually my dog, Miss Ellie. And Tactile Medical is actually out there right now. They just yelled at me again today for not using it as enough as I should. But the mobility in my neck is so much better. I don't know if I'll ever be back to 100%, especially if you play football for long enough, you won't get it back. The nutritional benefits I've learned, just I went on when I left Nebraska to go to North Carolina, I think I went 2 years without eating red meat, which was valuable, which was really valuable. I found that you can live without having steak every night. But I did learn the aspect of nutrition. And again, I'm kind of going all over the place with this, but there's so much to talk about in terms of what rehab really is, and the value of it. And I don't know if it can be overstated, to be quite honestly. I've learned I can endure a lot more than I ever thought. I really did. Right? This journey puts you through something really, really difficult, and we've all got different experiences with it, and I've learned that I can endure so much more than I even thought possible. I'm almost back to being able to work up to my previous standards. I've absolutely gained a new perspective on life, and I'm much more able to express it. I think I've tried to always have a different perspective on what I do and who I do it for, but now I'm much more apt to say thank you to a lot of different people. I'm much more apt to tell my players how I really feel, how much I care about them, which I don't know, I would have felt myself feeling a little bit soft if I'd have done that early on in my career. Maybe it's age, I don't know, maybe it's the cancer journey, it's absolutely part of the journey. But being able to express myself to my players and to my coworkers and the people that I care about a lot more often, a lot more frequently now, I think invigorates me every single day when I'm able to do it. And I'm thankful to have the process to be able to do that. And I come to the realization there's so many more wonderful people out there who are always willing to help. Look at the people in this room, right? Everybody in this room that's willing to help. This is actually, I've said I was going to share one of these every time I get a chance. I had a slightly different experience, obviously. I was a football coach at the University of Nebraska, going through a pretty public, that's another aspect I didn't talk about. when you're in that position and you're going through it, like, there's no sense of privacy, you know what I mean? And a lot of times we just want to be left alone, right? And so, funny side note, to the people of Nebraska, they were unbelievable to me when I got sick. I mean, I got more mail. I remember like we had a duffel bag full of mail. This is a really funny story, actually. Some people are of the opinion that, and where you stand on it politically, whatever, doesn't matter to me, I don't really care. Would love to send me like weed in the mail to my house. Hey, this will work, and I'm like, it's Nebraska, like you can't do that. So we would wait for garbage day and I'd go throw it out really quick. So it wouldn't sit in the garbage can and have somebody come by and smell it. But at one point in time, I got a letter from the Supreme Court of the United States. I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. Literally, the Supreme Court of the United States was sitting in my mailbox at work, and I'm like, uh-oh, they found out about all the mail I've been getting. And my health journey was public. Obviously, it was like Sports Illustrated, USA Today, all of that craziness because I coached at Nebraska. And it was a letter from Clarence Thomas, who was a huge University of Nebraska fan because his wife is from Omaha. And he had reached out to me, wanting to make sure if there was anything I ever needed, please make sure you reach out to me and let me know. He honestly still checks in on me, which is bizarre and crazy. But it just further showed that there's so many people out there, more than you realize, that really care about you and your journey and how you're recovering. So I say that because I was able to have some of the best nutritional support in the world. Dave Ellis was the nutrition guy at Nebraska. I don't know where he is now, but like they literally made me that shake every single day. And I don't suggest it if you're faint of heart, but it's 905 calories per shake, 136 grams of carbs, 26 grams essentially of fat, and 41 grams of protein every time you have one. And he would make me like 6 of those a day. It was gross. It was so good. So I always said I would share that recipe because I left, I got done with treatment. How low did I get? Like 195 or 200 pounds, something like that? Which I hadn't been since I was like 13 years old.
I could rub my arms around you, put it that way.
Yeah.
Never been able to do that before.
Yeah. And by the time I was done drinking those, I was able to get back up to like 240, 250 pounds and feeling like a normal person again. This is actually one of my whys. So this is a picture of little Miss Kira over there, because I wasn't really able to walk at a point in time. And so our mailbox was across the street, and so she would always, like one of our big deals was she would take me and walk me to the mailbox. And so at the end of the day, when I finally got a clean bill of health, she made me a keychain with a picture of her and me holding hands and walking. So I still keep that every day. I had other pictures with me and Maya back there. So Maya, and I express this to you guys because they're my why. Maya's not very big into sports. She's super smart, going to pre-vet, all of those things. But my first game back at the University of Nebraska, where we do that walk when they drop the buses off and everybody walks in the stadium, the first time ever she had requested that she walk with me into the stadium. And so, for a dad, that's really cool. Like, really cool. And that's part of the reason why. Like, Like, it's part of the reason why I'm still here today, because of my family and the people that care about me. But you know, my journey, my process with this disease, with this issue, has been long and it's ongoing. And I mean this with the utmost of sincerity. If at any point in time there's anything I can do for anyone, please, 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 please reach out. I don't care if it's at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, it doesn't bother me. I'm probably in the office anyway. But I do think if I had a thought to leave you with at one point in time, whether you're a doctor, a service provider, whatever, the journey and the discussion of rehab post-treatment, I think, is so under-discussed and so underdone for people who are surviving and the years that follow afterwards. I don't know if it'll ever stop, you know, the process you go through of being healed. If any of you guys have any good dental advice, I could use some. My teeth are splitting in half now. I don't know what that's about, but it is what it is. Please, please do so. Please do not think, if you're going through active treatment right now, I know the last thing you want to hear about or talk about is the process of after you got clear scans, but it is important. It matters. It will affect your everyday life afterwards for decades to come, hopefully decades to come. And I'm a bit of a hardhead, so I don't always do what I'm supposed to do in terms of the rehab. I try. Work tends to get in the way too much for it, but please, please do not underestimate the value of who you are, what you are,